welcome to this dedicated podcast for Light Middle East, the region's premier exhibition for lighting, design and technology taking place in Dubai. Just around the corner, in fact. The 15th edition will take place from the 28th to the 30th of September 2021 at the Dubai World Trade Center, featuring some 100 exhibitors from 23 countries. Returning features, of course, include the THINKLIGHT conference and the always popular Light Middle East Awards, which will take place during a gala dinner ceremony at the conclusion of the exhibition on the 30th of September. So plenty to look forward to. The countdown has well and truly begun. Of course, the industry is looking forward to reuniting again in a safe and controlled environment. But in the meantime, we do have an engaging and educational podcast to cover. And to that end, in today's episode, we'll talk about the importance of lighting control systems. And our special guest today is Matthew Dodd, Business Development Manager for Lighting Solutions at Scientechnic, which of course is Light Middle East's gold sponsor and headline sponsor for the Light Middle East Awards. Matthew, great having you with us.
Hi, thanks for inviting me.
So what do you believe are the main benefits of using controls systems in buildings?
I think the obvious main benefit and what everybody hopes to use light controls for and what it should be used for is mainly to reduce energy, of course. So typically you can really save between 30 and 60% of your lighting energy, which in some buildings can be 50% of the cost. So, there's a big saving to be made. I think there's other elements that can be an additional benefit. So things such as environment, comfortable environment, adjusting light levels for comfort of the users in particular rooms, even down to maintenance. There's a lot of systems out there now that are using cloud platforms. Technology is really advanced. So you can monitor multiple sites across, one head MPC sitting in a head office somewhere. And this can reduce maintenance. You don't have to have people walking around, traipsing around buildings, trying to find errors. Errors are simply reported onto the system. Yeah. It can do energy monitoring. So reports are all printed off in one location. So it's, very, very easy, very simple. The hardest part, I guess, is to implement it and have the buy-in from stage one.
Yeah, it's obviously interesting you mentioned that energy usage can be reduced by 30 to 60% in buildings, which of course in turn improves the carbon footprint. And this of course comes at a time when only yesterday the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change issued its most grim warning for climate change and I guess the almost irreversible effects that are already ongoing. But when it comes to energy conservation, energy consumption in buildings, lighting controls and smart lighting, they clearly have I would imagine quite a major role to play in helping reduce carbon dioxide emissions. If you were to consider all the buildings in the world were to use these technologies that can reduce energy consumption by up to 60%, that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the energy saving is actually only a part of it. A lot of the manufacturers these days, the processes that they're using, the way they're manufacturing, they're reducing their carbon footprint. So your carbon footprint before you've actually implemented the system has already been reduced from the manufacturer's side. So, it's a global goal for everybody to pull together and really do this as a whole. So, manufacturers have started the ball rolling. They've done their bit, reducing their carbon footprint. So, for now, we've got to make sure that we're implementing the right systems, the right strategies to continue that reduction in carbon footprint.
And why do you think that some clients sometimes opting to not use these lighting control systems?
It's a very interesting one. I think there's a mixture, really. I think the main thing is, I've heard controls being referred to as the dark art in the past. It's not something that people really see as a necessity. Air conditioning, all these kind of systems, fire alarm, they're a necessity. The building regulations clearly state you need these in place. And who would sit in the Dubai office when there was no air conditioning? Yeah. No one's going to want to sit there. So the first thing that they see when it comes to reducing cost of a building is, okay, do we really need this light control system? And I think that comes from whether the correct specifications are being generated, the correct support and education with, everybody from the MEP world to the clients to lighting designers. We have to offer them the support and the knowledge for everybody to gain from it, really. So I think it's a lack of the client understanding. I think it's a lack of realizing the necessity. maybe not understanding the benefits that it can bring. And so I guess it's always the first one that they strike off the list, which is a bit of a shame, of course.
But that's presumably changing slowly, surely, as long as I guess, as you mentioned, education is a key element of it.
Yeah, I think from me, I've always been in lighting controls for the last 14 years. I've been in controls, and the UK was a very different market compared to here. And I joined the UAE 6 years ago. I've seen a big shift in technologies that are being implemented. I've definitely seen a change in the vision and the understanding of controls. But, like everything, there's always more we can strive to do a little bit better. And I think our part is to educate and support the lighting community as a whole and the clients, to give them the best system, help them reduce energy, help them understand, and help them reduce costs.
I guess the retrofit market would potentially be very large. I mean, I'd assume, especially in Dubai, we obviously love new technologies. I'd imagine lighting control systems and new buildings is not an issue, but in the retrofit market, that must be a big potential opportunity for you.
Yeah, and I think the technologies that they have these days are really able to conquer some of the challenges that you had before with retrofit. There's Bluetooth modules now that you can connect to individual lights or groups, whereas before, I think when it comes to retrofit, people say, "Oh, but I've got to remove everything and rewire everything." A lot of the times they have a lot of the infrastructure in place, so they want to keep the work to a minimal and give the client what they need as an output. So I think there's technologies that you can use, RF, Bluetooth. These things can conquer the typical concrete stairwell. People don't want to be running cables from 1 dB up 35 floors.
Yeah.
So, these can help conquer some of the challenges that you have in the retrofit, and also give a benefit as well.
Let's talk about some of the main developments and technological advances in lighting control systems. What are they in recent times in the last year or two?
I think for me, the biggest noticeable one is, Dali's been around for a while now. It kind of took over from DSI, and it was the new thing to use. And after it was implemented, it took many years. It kind of stayed the same, really. It kind of was just being rolled out across the world, I guess. Now, recently, with the DIA, they've sort of implemented a lot more things like this D4i, which is along with Dali Plus, actually, which was, I think, released in July, that they were going to bring this Dali Plus in. And this is actually to help bring Dali into a wireless stage using thread. So it allows for cross communication. It allows the traditional 2-bus wire. Sometimes when people want to add things on, they've already got limitations. So it does bring a benefit. I think now the fact that they've brought these technologies, it's how do we implement them? How do we ensure that the correct standards? When Dali came out, there was Dali compliant, and then people were using this term Dali compatible. So of course it worked on Dali, but it didn't comply to all the standards. So I hope that now the Dali Association will have things in place where people should register the products. We should be a little bit more stringent in what we're using, how these things are tested.
Okay. And and I guess that sort of leads on to my next point in terms of what are the sort of developments in Dali and Dali technology to allow for greater compliance from manufacturers in the market.
Well, with Dali 2 now, it's supposed to be more allow cross manufacturers. So a Dali 2 compliant product should be able to sit on a number of systems, if you like. So from one manufacturer to another, they should all be within this compliance. So no longer are you tied to a specific brand. If you have a whole system and later on you need an additional product that manufacturer doesn't make, it should allow that you can still expand and scale your system with products that aren't necessary from the original manufacturer. And I know that the Dali Alliance have put a lot of measures in place, and there's a lot of test processes that we've put in to ensure that this happens. So it's exciting.
Sure. And I know a recent development, which you mentioned before, is D4i in Dali. Could you care to elaborate on that?
D4i is the first initial stage where they are allowing Dali now the messages to be transmitted wirelessly. So before, DALI was a traditional two-bus system. Everything ran on a two-bus system. Now you'll be able to have DALI hubs, and the intelligence, I believe, is actually going to be kind of in the driver itself and in the hub. So wireless drivers can transmit DALI messages to a hub, which then can be connected to an infrastructure.
Okay.
Yeah,
understood. So you yourself, you've been in the lighting controls business for, you said, around 14 years, 12 years, was it?
Yeah, around
14 years, okay. And 6 years in the UAE with Scientechnic?
No, I was with a previous company before, and then I joined Scientechnic as the light controls division manager for the first 18 months.
So I guess you could say relatively new. I mean, obviously, just as COVID sort of came, wasn't it? But how important is this as the lighting controls division at Scientechnic from your point of view?
Massive. They give the team massive support in terms of technical advice. Everybody knows a DALI driver, a 1 to 10 volt, but these guys are specialists in design. They understand the infrastructure of designing a system. We have engineers that when the systems go to site, we might sell a lighting project, which necessarily we don't probably have the controls. But these engineers can assist our delivery team in understanding where the issues might be, because often there's a blame game. It's controls, it's the light. So they're a massive part to us. And I think to be able to offer the client a holistic solution of lighting and controls and ensure the compatibility of both is massive. There's always gaps that when the lights are sold by one company and the controls by another, there's always gaps. There's always lack of communication. Maybe somebody's working on an old spec, an old drawing, and then when it gets to site, then it's a big headache to sort out. So I think there's a massive benefit from our teams working together from the lighting and light controls.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot. It looks very sort of positive for the division. What would you like to see more from the lighting industry when it comes to lighting controls moving forward over the next, say, 3 to 5 years? I guess as we exit this pandemic era that we're now slowly moving out of.
I guess I'd like to see the controls community as a whole supporting clients, supporting specifiers, and giving them the correct tools, the correct information, the correct support to give the clients not necessarily an over-engineered system or an under-engineered system, to give them what suits the project, probably a big education drive. We have D4i and DALI Plus, that's the new technologies. I only found them from reading up and doing some research. And I speak to people on a regular basis about these technologies, and nobody's really aware. So I think it's a big drive to promote the latest advances, show how it can be a benefit, show this to clients, and really push the systems. I think that'll be good to see the change.
As the technology starts to be adopted in greater capacity, are we going to see the initial sort of capital outlay reduce over time?
Yeah, I think, especially since we had this COVID period, I think everyone's looking at capital expenditure and operating expenditure. So I think controls manufacturers as well, from 5 years ago, everything's coming to a head where there's no longer a monopoly. So products have to be rightly priced. And then implementation, I think, can reduce energy costs and in turn put money back in the client's pocket. So we do a lot of projects now where we try to calculate an ROI. We try to make them understand how they can make this money back.
So, I mean, obviously the initial capital expenditure is a little bit more, but over the long run, saving money quite significantly.
Yeah, and I think smart design is something we throw around the office quite often. We don't look at one design. We see where we can use this smart design to reduce costs. I mean, you don't really typically need a centrally controlled system for washroom areas, store cupboards. This can be where you split a centralized system into standalone parts where it's not really that necessary. And this can reduce the cost quite a lot.
Moving on to Light Middle East, Matthew, of course, Scientechnic is the gold sponsor for the exhibition itself and the headline sponsor for the awards nights at the conclusion of the event. It's obviously been a long time between innings for the industry to get together under one roof for obvious reasons, but we're almost there at the end of September. How much are you looking forward to reuniting, reconnecting with the global and regional international lighting design community, safely, securely. How much are you looking forward to it?
Immensely, to be honest. It's been a long time, and I think I speak on behalf of the whole lighting community. It's going to be great to have everybody together under one roof, giving everybody the recognition that they deserve. Well, I would normally say over the last year, but it's been probably nearly 2 years now. So I'm really looking forward to seeing people that I haven't seen for a long time.
Absolutely. Matthew, it's been a pleasure having you with us, and I really appreciate your time. Really interesting discussion. And we look forward to seeing you later in September at Light Middle East 2021.
For sure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks to everyone for listening into this podcast. We hope you found it educational and informative. Be sure to follow Light Middle East on our official social media accounts at LightME Official. That's on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Of course, don't forget to register your visit to Light Middle East in September. Go to the website, www.lightme.net. We do have an exciting program of podcasts coming up in the build-up to Light Middle East. Of course, another one with Scientechnic and many more as well. Until then, stay safe, stay secure. Over and out.